What's going on, guys? Welcome into Vikings Now. I'm your host for today's show, Patrick Siepman. And coming up, we are going to be talking about possibly signing Dalton Risner in NFL free agency. The Vikings opened up some more cap space, a little bit more cap space after trading Zadarius Smith. And then we're going to be talking about bringing back Adrian Peterson because AP had some comments about returning to the NFL. So obviously, as the Vikings being his most prominent team, we're going to talk about reuniting Adrian Peterson with the Minnesota Vikings. And we're also going to round out today's show. We're talking about Justin Jefferson because he is supposed to get extended this summer, or at least I hope he is. So I'm going to be talking about what those figures could look like and actually how much per year number 18 could make. But before we get into all that and more, if you guys want the Vikings, or if you guys think the Vikings will win the NFC North again, like today's video. You know, there's a lot of talk about the Lions. Even the Bears are getting some love to win the NFC North. I'm just not really buying into all that hype. If you think the Vikings are going to repeat as NFC North champs, show them some love, show the channel some love, and go down there and like today's video. Now let's talk about it. The first segment on today's show, should the Vikings sign Dalton Risner? If you guys don't know, he's an interior offensive lineman from the Denver Broncos, and he's probably the best interior offensive lineman left in free agency. And the Vikings do have some uncertainty at the interior offensive line position. Obviously, Garrett Bradbury, Ed Ingram, and Ezra Cleveland, they've been just okay the past couple years, but by no means have they solidified themselves as starters on this offensive line. A Vikings beat reporter, Dustin Baker, had this to say about the Vikings possibly signing Dalton Risner. He said, "Why would the Vikings sign an offensive guard, as they seem pretty well set in the trenches? Simple. Improvement and depth. Left guard Ezra Cleveland's contract expires at the end of the 2023 season, and it is unclear if Minnesota is dying to have him back beyond his rookie deal." I think that's a fair point. On the right side, at guard, Ed Ingram fired up a topsy-turvy rookie season, succumbing to gaffes and poor performance early in the season before starting to right the ship down the stretch, which I agree. Ed Ingram, he was very up and down during his rookie year. But if we want to take a look at Risner PFF grades, to kind of just see how he's graded out over the past couple of seasons. In P, in parentheses, that is his pass blocking grade, and R is his run blocking grade. We got it from 2019 to 2020. So in 2019, he was pretty solid all across the board. I mean, 69.8 from the interior of the offensive line as a pass blocker, pretty good. But we have seen the inconsistency with Risner. We have seen the ups and downs, and he is just an overall solid interior offensive lineman. He's no Quentin Nelson. He's not by any means an all-pro or Pro Bowl level offensive guard, but I do think he would add really solid depth to this Vikings offensive line. Like I said, Ed Ingram, he kind of had a roller coaster rookie year. I mean, I remember he was terrible for the first 8 weeks, and then he started to play good. And then you had a game where he was bad again. I mean, Ed Ingram, it would be a good game, it would be a great game, then it would be a bad game, then it would be an awful game. I mean, you really did not know what you were going to get from Ed Ingram on any given week. And then Ezra Cleveland, obviously he's on his last year of his deal, and he hasn't really been living up to that second-round hype out of Boise State. Obviously he was a left tackle, then he transitioned into playing left guard in the NFL. But Ezra Cleveland, I mean, he's another guy where you're like, I like him, but I don't really love him. So honestly, Dalton Risner, will he start for the Vikings week 1? I'm not sure if they would sign him, but I do think he would be a fun guy to bring in, and just he would just be a good depth piece, and I think he would just solidify this offensive line a little more. But I'll toss it your guys' way. Let me know. Would you sign Dalton Risner with the Vikings having just a little more money left in this year's cap space with after the Zadarius Smith trade? Give me an S for sign or give me a P for pass. This will be the pinned comment on today's video. So if YouTube throws an ad break your way, sit back, let it play, and go down and answer today's pinned comment. I would sign him. I would bring in Dalton Risner. I just think the Vikings do need more depth, like I was saying, at the interior of their offensive line. This has been the problem with the Vikings offensive line in years past. You have Darisaw, you have O'Neal, you have your tackles of the future, but let's figure it out in the middle. And like I was saying, Ingram and Cleveland, they've been inconsistent. They just really haven't been living up to their, second-round hype. They're both second-round picks, obviously in different draft classes, but they really haven't been living up to it. So adding a veteran piece, adding a veteran presence in a Dalton Risner would just add more competition, and overall, I think it would be a positive. And honestly, if I had to pick between Ed Ingram, Dalton Risner starting at right guard, I'd go Dalton Risner any day of the week. All right, guys, this is it. We're going to talk about it. We got to talk about it. Adrian Peterson bringing him back to the Minnesota Vikings. So there was a report that came out, and AP hasn't mentally hung it up and is open for an opportunity to return to the NFL. I'll say this first off. He is not coming back with the Minnesota Vikings. I'm just going to say that right away. I would not bring AP back for the Minnesota Vikings. I think it would be fun. Obviously, he would look good, in the purple and gold again, rocking that 28. But his fit with the Vikings, this running back room is just too loaded. But I want to take a trip down memory lane. I think this would be fun to kind of explore the possibility and just figure out what's really going on with Adrian Peterson right now because, hey, he was probably my favorite Vikings player of all time. I mean, he was the guy that made me fall in love with the purple and gold, watching him just terrorize teams in the late 2000s and early 2010s. He is really one of the best running backs of all time. But this is what the quote that Adrian Peterson said that kind of sparked all the Adrian Peterson rumors. He said, "We will see what happens. My mindset is, if God's willing, maybe an opportunity presents himself, and maybe it happens this season. But nothing happens this season for sure. I will be hanging it up." So pretty much saying if the opportunity presents itself, he's all in, and he wants to come back. But if no team reaches out, I think AP will retire. I got some thoughts on this and more coming up in a second. But I'll ask you guys, would you bring back Adrian Peterson? Obviously, we have questions around Dalvin Cook. But just bringing back AP, if you're the GM, if you're Quasi and AP comes up to you and says, hey, I'll accept a 1-year, $1 million deal. Just bring me back in the purple and gold. I'll retire here after a season. Let me know. Give me a Y for yes or give me an N for no. Number one reason why I would say no to this is he's 38 years old. Yeah, he is 38 years old. We have seen running backs in the NFL hit a huge dip at 28, and this dude is 38 years old. And I don't want this to kind of discredit what AP has done in his career because, again, he is one of the best running backs of all time. And I will say his MVP year is legitimately one of the best years in NFL history. He was coming off a torn ACL, and he was just 9 yards away from breaking the single-season rushing record. I mean, look at these stats on screen right now. He's got over 3,000 carries in his career, just under 15,000 yards. Obviously, he wasn't the best dual threat back, but still got up to 300 catches and had 126 touchdowns. Now, let me ask you, why would AP even want to come back? I think there's a couple reasons. One, I think he could be record chasing. So right now, AP is 5th in NFL history with, like we just said, 14,918 rushing yards, and he trails Barry Sanders by just 351 yards for 4th place on that list. So AP, knowing the competitive guy he is, he could just be chasing Barry Sanders' record where he could be looking back and be like, you know what, I'm 5th all time in rushing. I could go run for 400 yards this year. Let me get up to 4th all time on the all-time rushing leaders list. That could be AP. But I do want to talk about this. It could also be a money thing with Adrian Peterson. Obviously, you've heard the stories. Listen, the guy's made over $100 million just off contracts in the NFL. We have heard the stories that he was let's just say he was a overspender with his money, and he may be running out of his pockets, maybe getting a little thin. We obviously just saw him fight Le'Veon Bell in a boxing match earlier this summer, and now he's talking about returning to the NFL. Could AP just need maybe an extra $1 million? I don't know. Whether it's money or whether it's him wanting to chase Barry Sanders for 4th all time, I'm just kind of out on bringing Adrian Peterson back. But let's talk about Jefferson, the current best player on the Minnesota Vikings. There was a report that came out that said the Vikings intend to extend Justin Jefferson this summer. I sure hope they are. I mean, this dude has had the best start for a wide receiver in NFL history. He is just under 5,000 yards, and he truly is one of the more fun players to watch nowadays in the NFL. And I swear if the Vikings, they just handle it right. Like, you're going to pay him no matter what. Honestly, I'll be okay with just handing him a blank check and saying, you fill it out, we'll adjust for you, because you're the best player on the football team. And this past season, he got it done, man. I mean, 1,800 yards. 1,800 yards from the wide receiver spot. And he also sat out the last game of the year, which just even says more about him. But just over 14 yards per catch, 8 touchdowns, 128 receptions, and he was really the catalyst. He was really the reason why this Vikings offense got going last year. He was absolutely fantastic every single game. But I hopped up, and I cooked up a little Justin Jefferson contract projection. I decided to give him 4 years for $140 million, which is $35 million per year with $120 guaranteed. I understand this is a ton of money. and this will make him easily the highest paid wide receiver in the league. Right now, it's Tyreek Hill at around $30 million a year. And I understand this is an egregious contract, but hey, this is a special contract for a special player, and that's Justin Jefferson. I'll ask you guys, would you offer this to Justin Jefferson? If you were a GM, if you were Kwesi, and you were sitting down with Jefferson and his agent, and they said, we want at least $35 million a year for 4 years, this is the contract that you offer him, 120 guaranteed. Give me a 1 for yes or give me a 2 for no. I understand this is a massive contract for a wide receiver, but I just think this guy is this good. And honestly, I'd be okay with paying the guy $35 million. I'm hoping it's around 32, hoping it's around $33 million a year. But you guys let me know. Give me a 1 for yes or give me a 2 for no in the comments section. And guys, thank you guys so much for watching today's show. If you guys made it this far in the video, give me a skull down in the comments section. Talked about AP, talked about Dalton Risner, and then we talked about Justin Jefferson getting extended. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. Go down in the comments. Give me a skull if you guys are a real one. And as always, Skull Vikes.